Welcome everybody. This is Pradeep from Sydney, kicking off the Green Economy Global event. This is a lead into Earth Day, the global event which has been working so strongly on sustainability. And to take this event further, let me hand over this mic to Aparna Saraogi. Over to you, Aparna.
Thanks, Pradeep. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today in our initiative, Invest in Our Planet, Moving to a Greener Economy. Thank you for being part of this initiative and making a conscious choice to invest in our planet. We're extremely delighted to welcome you all from the different parts of the globe. Friends, India just witnessed the hottest March in 122 years. This is just one of the terrifying effects of the climate risk. We are seeing glaciers melting in Iceland, wildfires in California. Our greatest treasure, I repeat, biodiversity, we are losing faster than ever. Greenhouse gas emissions are at a record level, which is leading to global warming. Global warming is actually global warming. Latest IPCC report suggests that if we don't act now, it would be too late. It's a time that we all need to join hands to invest in our planet. There is also a silver lining to this. We have seen in last decade that the cost of renewable energy has gone down significantly. There are a lot of initiatives being taken across the globe from organizations, government, FIs, and if we join hands and scale them up, we can save our planet. Combating climate risk is a daunting task, which cannot be done by any one entity. It requires a collaborative effort from everyone. Governments across the world, citizens, FIs, corporates, NGOs, we all need to come together to invest in our planet. But we can together save our planet and together move to a greener economy. And that's the reason we have organized this initiative, Invest in Our Planet, Moving to a Greener Economy, in collaboration with Earth Day and INSquare, so that together we can invest and create a better future for our future generations. To begin with, I'm going to request Ms. Karuna Singh to give us the opening remark. Karuna is a regional Aipac director at Earth Day. She's responsible for leading Earth program for close to 25 countries and friends, 5 billion people. Yes, she's leading the Earth program for close to 5 billion people. She was invited as a speaker for UN COP21, and she's leading numerous international and national committees on climate risk. So if I'm going to list them out, the whole hour is going to go away. So Karuna, thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to your opening remarks.
Thank you, Aparna, and namaskar from India to everybody. It's so wonderful to have a galaxy of people, international people, because that is what our theme for this year. I'm with Earth Day Network, and in the 5th anniversary of Earth Day, the theme is Invest in Our Planet. And this calls for a partnership for all of humanity, whether it's businesses or politicians or citizens at large. Everyone has to come together at this hour when it has become to time climate change. In fact, it is the largest danger that humanity faces today. So invest in our planet is a way that everyone can do their bit. Talking about the green economy, if you look at the rapidly expanding green economy that focuses on such activities as investments in infrastructure and assets that allow reduced carbon emissions and pollution, and enhanced energy and resource efficiency, and the prevention of loss of biodiversity, which Aparna just spoke about, as well as ecosystems, then green investments need to be supported through targeted public expenditure, public policy, and changes in and regulations are the recommendations the UNEP makes. The IMF 2021 study concludes that green and sustainable infrastructure has an economic multiplier 2 to 7 times larger than traditional infrastructure investments. But, it's not just the economic benefits or the environmental benefits, it is social benefits as well. As far as businesses are concerned, there are great economic benefits from going green. If you take the case of Nike, once they had invested in environmental systems, they were able to save on the inputs that came in and the waste that went out, as well as the transportation and the energy used. So there was an up in their profits for that. And a recent poll in the US showed that 70% of consumers said that if there was a choice between two commensurate products, they would go in for those that came from a greener economy. So things like taking the circular economy from just being there to being a front runner is important. It's beneficial on all fronts. Earth Day Network also has a program going called Women and the Green Economy, where we think that women should be encouraged to have equal opportunity for green jobs, and involves giving them training, giving them openings, and also thinking about the ways that they might need special assistance. Like, for instance, when they have children, there should be nurseries that could look after it. I do know of some organizations do jobs in tandem, so the women to do work for that. So this is not just one way of investing in our planet, which for this year's Earth Day. Investing in our planet can also be done in environmental education, which is compulsory. We must have climate education mandated in each and every country. We must see to it that there is an end to plastic pollution. We must increase our green cover. We must move fashion to be more sustainable. Fashion is one of the most polluting industries. We need to restore our earth. We need to restore our natural resources. So on this Earth Day, or the day before Earth Day, let me appeal to all and say, no act is too small. Do what you can, but please invest in our planet.
Thank you so much, Karuna, and thank you so much for re-highlighting that green business make good business sense. And we are going to talk about circular economy in agriculture and fashion in a while today. So thank you, Karuna. So next I'm going to invite a gentleman who's very, very heavily in technology. He's an executive director, Aipac, for Virtual Reality, Augmented Reality Association. He is a global citizen, so he's a CEO of a global mindset. He's an adjunct professor at a number of universities, and he's also a co-founder with me for INSquare. So Pradeep, request you to please give us the opening remarks for this session.
Thank you very much, Aparna. First of all, I want to thank Karuna for the wonderful opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to Karuna. At the outset, I want to mention that this event today, this global event today, is being presented jointly by Earth Day and INSquare. And it's been absolutely lovely to work with Karuna and Nishu to get this event underway. I will talk about now as to why we thought about having this event, and it comes back to the initiative that Aparna and I are co-founders, which is called INSquare, which is a short form for Inclusive Innovation in the New Normal. Now, what is INSquare focused on? INSquare is focused on emerging trends. We have been in a pandemic for the last more than 2 years. So, what is happening is that we are seeing the future of work, the future of education, the future of skills, all of it is getting reshaped. Not only that, as we have seen from the great resignation, that our own value systems are getting redefined. So we are living in historic times when people can play games to make a living, people can be an influencer, and there are so many different career paths. But one thing is definite for certain, that as you see the generation today, they are strongly focused on to getting work-life balance. They are strongly focused on to inclusion. They're strongly focused on to sustainability. And this is exactly what INSquare wants to focus on. INSquare is a think tank which is focused on to emerging trends and how to bring about a change aligning with the changing value system as it is emerging. It is a platform for getting together different stakeholders for building a community as we go by. And if you were to look at the focus of today's event, which is on the green economy, I suppose there is no greater subject to talk about, which we know that this is no longer a subject we can leave for our children or our grandchildren. But when we look about the green economy or sustainability, especially at a global level, we see imbalances in different parts of the world. We see imbalances in terms of incomes, we see imbalances in terms of quality of life, and so many other things. And also, we people, the population today wants to see more inclusion. And inclusion is not only from a social perspective, there is enough research to indicate there is significant improvement in performance both at an organization level as at the individual level when we have an inclusive workforce. So, what we need today is inclusive growth as we transition to the green economy. So remember that growth is an important part of the green economy and inclusion is an important part of the growth element. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I say let's go for inclusive growth as we transition to the global economy. With that, I thank Earth Day. I thank all the leaders who have come here and taken out their time to share their thoughts. And I thank everyone who's joined in for taking out the time to join for this event. So, with that, let's kick it off and back to you, Aparna.
Thanks, Pradeep. Okay, so
Let
now we are
me,
going to.
let me, let me, in the beginning of the session, you see, Aparna stole my thunder because she said, have a lovely morning, evening, night. And this is what I wanted to say. And in that moment, I also need to introduce Aparna to you. Aparna is somebody that I have known for the last couple of years. Professionally, she is the head of credit risk for India for the Natwest group. But what really got me looking at Aparna and I working together was she's the co-founder of a inclusion focused initiative called We, which is all about women empowerment and entrepreneurship. And that is why when we sat together and we looked at what we wanted to do in INSquare, there was a good wavelength, and that's how she's also one of the co-founders of INSquare. She's also a TEDx speaker and she writes for a lot of media publications, and there's lots more to it. But suffice to say, it's lovely to have Aparna, and let's give a big round of applause to Aparna as she takes the rest of the session forward. So, once
Thanks,
again,
Pradeep,
back to you, Aparna.
for the kind introduction. Now we are going to move to our panel discussion. So I'll quickly introduce our panel. Our first panelist, so when we started working on this conference, I must have spoken to more than 100 sustainable leaders across the globe. And when they got to know that he's part of the panel discussion, the few words said, wow, he's a green leader, well-known politician, a peacemaker, a former United Nations Environment Program Under Secretary General and Executive Director, someone who, as a chairperson of OECD Development Assistant Committee, brought so many countries as a partner, somebody who got the legislation like Nature Diversity Act passed, somebody who negotiated peace negotiation in Sri Lanka. And I love his quote, if we all come together and work together, we can achieve a lot for our planet Earth. Friends, please give a big round of applause for our first panelist, His Excellency Erik Solheim. Thank you, Erik, for being with us today. Now, I'm very, very sure all of us must have followed COP26, right? It is one of the major event of United Nations, right, annual event. And we are very honored to have with us somebody who supported COP26 as a principal sponsor. He has worked in World Bank as a climate change director. He has led London Circular Energy Program. He's well-known face in London and across the globe for sustainable finance. He's the head of climate change at Natwest Group, who is driving a purpose-led strategy, including COP26 sponsorship. What I did was I looked at where all he's part of the board and trustee, and I realized, oh my God, I can't remember. Is it Sustainable Living? He's part of Institute of Chartered Accountants for England and Wales. So many. Thank you, James, for being with us. Thank you. We look forward to discuss how finance can be mobilized to move to the greener economy. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause, quick round of applause to James. I was introduced to Ehab by Nishu. She told me he's a youth ambassador. When I met Ehab, who's a youth ambassador for My Voice, My Future, Earth Day Initiative, and then I researched about him, I couldn't believe at such a young age, Ehab has done so much research, which includes dealing with the energy scarcity problem of Middle East and North Africa, role of digitalization, role of youth, role of sustainable finance. He's implemented so many projects. For example, as a project coordinator of Green Generation Foundation, he implemented the climate change program for more than 400 leaders across the globe with UNICEF as a partner. As of now, Ehab is also climate change officer at UNICEF for water, sanitation and hygiene, Middle East and North Africa. He was also a speaker at UN COP23. Thank you, Ehab, for joining us. And we really look forward to you to have an inspiration for the youth. Thank you. Can we please have a round of applause? Friends, the most important thing we need to make a real change is people, sustainable managers and sustainable leaders. We're extremely delighted to have with us Dr. Sutapa Pati, who is the academic dean of School of Sustainability, Xavier Institute of Man. This is the first of its kind school in India who are nurturing and growing sustainable leaders. The leaders who take sustainability as a strategy for economic growth, which is what is required to move to the greener economy. And Sutapa has done a lot of research on creating self-help group using to use renewable energy, decentralized community-based system. And that's what is needed because we want to get more and more citizens to move to the greener economy. Thank you, Dr. Sutapa, for joining with us. Entrepreneurs are backbone of any society. If we have to move to the greener economy, we need to support green energy entrepreneurs. I'm very happy to have a very dear friend, Sarah Roberts. Sarah and I have shared a lot of panels together and she's always there. Someone who's a director at a new energy Nexus, which is one of the world's leading accelerator and the funds for clean energy entrepreneurs across the globe. She has helped numerous clean energy entrepreneurs to move to the next level, adopt the right technology, navigate the challenge, and help us to move to the green journey. Thank you, Sarah, for being with us. We really look forward to have your thoughts. Okay, so let's start our panel discussion. So James, we are going to start our panel discussion with you. There is a lot of talk going on green. There is a lot of discussion talks going on green economy, green funds, green mortgages. What is this all about, James?
Great, thank you, Aparna, and thank you very much for organising this. And it's wonderful to be with so many people across the globe, friends old and new. So delighted to be part of this wonderful initiative. I think we saw at COP26 the role that finance can play as Mark Carney brought together financial institutions representing over $130 trillion of capital. And I think that $1 billion, I beg your pardon, I'm scaling up already. But I think that shows how important finance is to the transition. I think we can mobilize this finance in a way that is really productive and constructive to fundamentally change financial flows towards the net zero transformation that's required for the economy. And the takeaway that I took from COP26 was the scale of the challenge. We're talking about, give or take, 52 gigatons of CO2 equivalent emissions today. And we've got to halve that by 2030 to 26 gigatons. And I think 4 gigatons were promised ahead of COP26 through the NDCs, and maybe another 4 to 6 through the Glasgow breakthroughs. So we've still got a huge amount unidentified, let alone not yet planned. And as we start to get financial flows consistent with that trajectory, we can expect a real acceleration of the transition. Now, of course, it's not really as simple as that. We have a massive challenge around both mobilizing this capital in developed countries, but even more significantly in developing countries. And they're the ones who need to not only decarbonize by getting themselves onto a lower carbon development trajectory, but in a way that supports their economic growth and their equitable growth for all and shared prosperity for people in those countries, but also deal with the existing temperature rises that are already baked in. And we're already seeing horrific storms that are challenging infrastructure and livelihoods, and most notably in Durban over the course of the last couple of weeks. So we also need money, not just for the mitigation of the emissions, but also to adapt to the climate challenge that we already face. And it's going to require all of us working together to work out how to get those financial flows moving and to make sure the promises and the commitments that we make genuinely are oriented towards that low carbon future, so that we can harness the power of net zero and the legacy of the Glasgow Financial Alliance. Thank you.
Thanks, James. James, just taking your points further, right? We talked about the big money which FI is committed to invest in the clean energy. But still, if you look at latest IPCC report, its climate situation is worsening, right? Do you think, and we are just asking your personal view, right, that there is a persistent gap between commitment and action, and climate advocates have missed that what drives the business? Because we see a lot of focus on the top, but when it comes to ground reality, why do you think situation is still worsening?
Yeah, well, I'm going to channel my inner Christiana Figueres and reference her brilliant sort of thesis around outrage and optimism, because I do think we should be outraged that a lot of the promises that have been made haven't been kept, and a lot of the commitments made in Paris still seem a long way away from that well below 2 degrees aspiration that was set there. And particularly as we understand the pace of climate deterioration and the importance of getting to that 1.5 degree, because every 10th of a degree really does make a difference. But at the same time, we now have the architecture that will enable this to happen. The combination of the nationally determined contributions that the big countries are putting together, the big emitters, really shows what can be done. They have to deliver on those promises. But that sets the policy trajectory as well, where people in the financial sector like us can make sure our finance is mobilized for that transition. So as Nick Stern often says to us, it is the growth story of the 21st century, and we need to make sure that we take advantage of that.
Sure, thanks, James. So from James, I'm going to move to Sarah. Sarah, you work with a lot of clean energy entrepreneurs across the globe. So just want to understand, when there is so much commitment, right, for funds commitment, what are the challenges they are facing?
So there are, and thank you for the question, and thanks for inviting us today. There are a myriad of challenges, and it really depends on the different market. New Energy Nexus works in India, China, Uganda, Nigeria now, Southeast Asia, California, New York. And there are a myriad of solutions out there. So these disruptions that are happening right now, we need to jump on them. And with all these solutions and all these challenges, we still have to face the fact that we have one planet. We have not been acting fast enough. So I have worked in the environment movement for such a long time. You know, 30 years ago, climate change was the #1 leading environmental threat that we faced. We're still not acting fast enough. So what we need to do is really build the field of clean energy entrepreneurship. We know now that it's much cheaper to invest in solar and to invest in wind. We need fossil fuels that are in power to shift that power. We need young, clean energy entrepreneurs to step up and disrupt the energy systems. So New Energy Nexus does that in 4 key ways. We help launch, fund, accelerate, and scale clean energy entrepreneurship. It's very important that it's locally driven, and it's critical that it's equitable as well. So it's really great to hear this. As an organization, we were founded in 2004 as a result of a climate disaster in California. One of the companies we invested in early on was Tesla. We then sold those shares and used that to invest in other clean energy entrepreneurship. We work with startups that are disrupting existing old, dirty systems. So for example, in Indonesia, we've got Swap, which is an electric mobility, e-mobility startup that we've just invested in. We've got clean energy entrepreneurs working in Uganda who don't actually have access to energy. So we're really working to get clean energy products to get access to energy. So solar lanterns and fuel briquettes to give safety to women, to give opportunities for women. 70% of our beneficiaries are women, and they're generating income. Really depends on what market, and it's a very big question. But I still hear, yes, we're committing to this, and yes, we're doing that, but there's not that many organizations on the ground really building that capacity with clean energy entrepreneurship, and that's what we do at New Energy Nexus.
Thanks, Sarah. So Sarah, taking it further, right? Because James talked about big money, right? And that needs to be leveraged for the clean energy. Do you think fintech can help in that direction?
Yes, so fintech, and I'm not an energy expert, I'm a mum, and I'm very concerned about what my little boy's future is going to be. So fintech is absolutely going to be able to help support clean energy growth at scale. I can share later on a recent article that New Energy Nexus published about the growth of fintech in China. The ability for fintech and blockchain to be used to perform due diligence so those financial flows can happen and that they can happen quicker. Fintech is also, for example, I've got an app where I track ren.co, I track and use my own greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, it's up to, there are lots of ways we can all work, but these apps and consumer power, consumers are switching banks, and they are consumers have power as well. I do think it's government and policy as well that's really important, and to see that leadership. But in terms of financial flows, people have the power to say, no, I'm not going to put my money in your bank when we know that you're funding dirty fossil fuels. And more and more happening, and particularly with Fridays for Future and the next generation that have been really subjected to so much fear. It's now the time really just get on with it and move the money and invest differently. And technologies will change that. I feel like I was at university yesterday. It was 20 years ago. And when I did photography, it was film and it was chemicals, and digital technologies are transitioning rapidly. And it's time for a renewable and hopeful future.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Hope this money goes in the clean energy, and we have more and more clean energy initiatives coming up. Erik, you are a global leader and a green diplomat. So as we all know, even as of today, global north continues to have a higher per capita emissions. And emissions from the global south is on a lower side, and that is needed for sustainability and even for the development to meet the current needs. Do you think much more needs to be done from the global north to help global south combat climate risks from the funds, technology, trade, negotiation perspective? Erik, I think you are on mute.
Okay, very good. First, the global north, of course, need to stop blaming the global south for the climate crisis. In Glasgow, some NGOs, some media started blaming India for the climate crisis. I mean, look, Indian per capita emissions up to this point is 125 part American climate emissions up to this part. America has emitted 25 times more than India per capita. So please stop blaming China or India or indeed the global south for these crises. The blame is on the north. But the good news is, of course, that India and China are part of the solution. They are not responsible for the problem, but they are part of the future solution. And we need to shift our thinking from the old win-lose, which was you do something which is good for the economy, but it backfires on the ecology. That was the normal pattern. We develop very fast, and then we pollute like hell. And when we become rich, we start solving the problem. That must be replaced by the win-win opportunities of the 21st century, because we have all the policies which are win-win. Renewable energy is the cheapest energy anywhere in the world, as we just heard. If you move from coal to solar, not only you do good for Mother Earth, you save money and you create many more jobs. So why do we wait? And I see four main drivers of this shift, all starting with a B. B for business. Companies are much ahead of governments in nearly all parts of the world. Microsoft is far ahead of the American government. April, which is a zero deforestation company in Indonesia, is far ahead of many Asian governments. IKEA is far ahead of any European or indeed any government when it comes to the circular economy. And there are so many other examples. So business is driving the world. Second B, Brussels. The European Union taxonomy will have enormous impact on Europe because it will be much cheaper and easier to invest in the green. And you will be penalized if you invest in the brown. And you will see major impact on this. And this will be exacerbated or made much, much stronger because of the need for Europe to develop energy independence during the current crisis. And energy independence, that means tapping the European resources, the sun, the wind, the hydropower, which is all there already in Europe. Third, B for B, Beijing. China is now the lead on every single environment-friendly technology. 80% consume that figure. 80% of all solar panels in the world are made in China. 99% of all electric buses in the world are running on Chinese roads. 70% of all high-speed rail are running on Chinese tracks. And I can go on and go on with wind, hydropower, green hydrogen. Everywhere China is the lead, and the rest of the world need to catch up with China. And fourth B, Bharat, India. since there are a lot of Indians here, look to how India is changing under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, leaving behind the old debate on whether India should develop or go green, into how can India go green and develop and bring people out of poverty at the same time. Few examples: solar power in India is now, very soon India will be the second biggest solar power in the world next to China. India is the first all-solar airport in the world in Kochi, or first all-solar rail station in the world in Assam. State of Madhya Pradesh will soon produce the solar power for the New Delhi metro system, which is the fourth biggest in the world. And you can go on and see how India is now moving into solar. Just recently, I was in Mumbai, and with the government there, I was happy to launch the electric mobility scheme of the state of Maharashtra. Look, Maharashtra is bigger than any nation in Europe except Russia, so it matters. And the city of Mumbai, 25 million, like all Nordic countries combined, they will now go into electric buses, two deck buses and one deck buses, big and small buses, they will all go electric, thanks to great initiatives by the government of Maharashtra. And indeed, this is also creating jobs in India, because the buses are produced in the city of Pune. So it's a win-win, good for economy and jobs, good for ecology at the same time. To just add, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, that is now the world leader in shifting into zero budget farming. It has been praised also by Prime Minister Modi. 6 million farmers. Well, this is called a pilot program. But pilot in India means as many people as in my nation, Norway, 6 million. 6 million farmers has moved into zero budget farming. They get greater yields, better economy, better health, and do good for Mother Earth at the same time. So in sum, this is the way forward, to look into every arena where we can get jobs and prosperity, while at the same time going green, the win-win solutions. And I see this happening now in Europe, in China, and more in Bharat in India.
So, Aparna, can I ask a question to Erik? Erik, do you live in India or do you live in Norway?
I live with my family in Norway, but true, I visit India very often. I also visit China very often, but now during the COVID, that's been very difficult to go to China. But as soon as China opens up, I will go there also quite a lot. And that is, of course, because I believe that China, we cannot solve any environment problem in the world without the two most populous nations in the world, and also the two fastest growing nations in the world, China and India. They are indeed at the center of everything we want to do in the 21st century. So the 21st century belongs to Asia, simply.
So today you are going to get 1.4 billion followers on Twitter. And back to you, Aparna.
So Erik, I must say we missed a golden opportunity to meet you while you were in India in person. So look forward to meet you soon to take our discussions further.
I hope to be back in June, and I'll be happy to meet you then.
Sure. Erik, you touched upon International Solar Alliance, and India is one of the founding members of that. Do you think it has the potential to solve global energy problems?
Absolutely. And this was an initiative by Prime Minister Modi with President Macron of France. I hope and pray that Mr. Macron is re-elected on Sunday in France, and I believe that will happen. So I think they can jointly take this alliance forward. This is, of course, about developing solar power in India itself. But solar power in India is the cheapest in the world. Labor costs are lower in India than in China. So India has the opportunity to deliver the lowest priced solar energy anywhere in the world. Indeed, solar power in India is now the cheapest energy which has ever existed on planet Earth. So India should have the potential not just to deliver this to India, but for Indian companies, Tata, Reliance, Renew, all these companies which are now strong in solar power, they should also take this to invest in other developing countries in Africa or in West of Asia, Latin America. So there's a huge promise coming from the solar revolution in India.
Absolutely, Erik. We look forward to that. Hopefully more and more startups come and leverage the solar energy potential in India. Thank you, Erik. We are going to move to Ehab. So Ehab, you are a youth ambassador for My Voice, My Future for Earth Day initiative. You are a face of youth to make positive climate change. I would like to understand what's the role of youth in making a positive climate change, and how can we mobilize youth to change the political will, because we need a lot of political will to make a real impact, right? How can youth play that critical role to mobilize political will to make a positive climate change?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me, Aparna? Okay, great.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Thank you for having me for today's event. It's my pleasure to be with you and with this esteemed panelist. The world's home for now is for 1.8 billion young people between the ages of 10 to 24, the largest generation of youth in history. Young people are increasingly aware of the challenges and risks presented by the climate crisis and of the opportunity to achieve sustainable development brought by a solution, let's say, to climate change. Young people are not only victims of climate change, they are also valuable contributors to climate action. They are agents of change, they are entrepreneurs, they are the innovators, they are the decision makers, they have to be the decision makers, and they have to play a huge role in the climate action, whether through education, science, technology, or let's say active participation. Young people are scaling up their efforts and using their skills and knowledge to accelerate climate action. So young people, they have to be well informed. They have to have a role in climate action through active participation, and through let's say the governments, they have to take the hands of the youth and young people to represent what they are, because their message is clear. The older generation has failed, and it's the young people who will pay in full for the climate impact that will affect them. So I think for the political participation of the youth and how they can affect the political situation of today's of our today, I think the most important part of youth, they have a role to play in the advocacy. They have to advocate for their rights. They have to advocate for the climate action. As I said, they are young people who will pay in full for the climate impacts, young people and children. So they have to advocate, and this advocacy, it should be coming from a well-informed background about climate change. So they have to be well educated. They have to be also to know their role about what is going on in the climate action and the climate change, to play their role. And also, I believe one of this, to achieve this, I think they have to actively participate in global events. Let's say, for example, the COP27, the COPs, the Conference of Parties. We have the upcoming one in COP27, which will be in Middle East. It will be in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. So they have to participate in a global event, and I'm happy that now we have a good number of youth who has taken role on these events. Recently, I have been in MENA Climate Week, which is the first in the MENA region. It was held in Dubai last March, and I'm happy to see that young people, they had a huge role in that event. To be honest, they have a multiple dedicated side events in the MENA Climate Week, and this is a good opportunity to be heard by the decision makers, the private sectors, the every stakeholders of the climate change, and the players of the sustainability and the climate community, let's say. I think this is a great opportunity. So I think young people, they have a huge role, and they have to take this role, and they have to be supported by the government, by private sector, by the every stakeholders in and climate change. Yes.
Sure, absolutely, Ehab. So, Ehab, your journey is very, very inspiring. I mean, reading your journey, I got a lot inspired. I'm sure that would be the case for a lot of the people who would be looking at this event later. So, you would like to know how you started, what all research have you done, the various events and things you have won, right? So, if you can just walk us quickly through that.
Yes, sure. For me, I studied water management and environment, so it's my background. Bachelor degree here in Jordan, and during my studies I have been working on my own project, which is about the renewable energy and using a biofuel, which is microalgae cultivation for biofuel production. I have been working on it since I was in the university, and after that I have been a part of different networks. I co-founded the Green Generation Foundation, which is youth-led environmental organizations working in locally here in Jordan. And also I have been part of a different event, COP23, for example, I have been a speaker at, and also multiple events in worldwide, let's say. I attended 2 expert meetings, which I'm grateful that I have been part of. 2 experts meetings, one of the sustainable finance and the green economy, and one for digitalization of the climate change. So it brought all of the, let's say, the sustainability leaders and the experts in the region, and they have a meeting, and they brought young people to represent the youth role and to represent the young people there, and it was a very fruitful opportunity. And for the researchers, I have been part of writing the first policy paper on energy in Jordan, which is Energy in Jordan, a youth perspective position paper, which is represented to the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Transport in order to take in consideration in their future plans. And currently now I'm working as a Water and Climate Change Officer at UNICEF MENA Regional Office, which we have a huge role in terms of water-related topics and spreading the hygiene practices and recently the climate change and the climate action. And I'm responsible for the youth role as well for the climate part, let's say. So yes, that's it.
Thanks, yeah. A lot of inspiration for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We are going to now move to Dr. Suttappa. So, Dr. Suttappa, there is a lot of talks on the future skills. You are a Dean of School of Sustainability. We would like to understand what are the new green jobs that are coming in India and across the globe, and do they pay the bills?
Thank you so much, Aparna, and congratulations for conducting this event. Wonderful panel. I'm going to speak from academician, as a teacher, and how the journey has been in setting up courses like MBA in Sustainability Management or BSc program in Sustainable Development, which is aligned to the SDG. We all have studied in linear model, we have studied the efficiency model, and our courses when we were studying and working were very well, we went deep into that with, the quality being understood in a very different way. Today, one understanding that might be that we can tweak that curriculum and way of teaching. But my experience has been that we need transformational change in curriculum and design of, young students who are going to take up green jobs. For example, suppose you have, as an example, if we have 106 credits as an MBA program, so you can't have 1 or 2 sessions, changing here and there. You need to do a complete revamp of the curriculum where students are taught about, low carbon intensive technologies,
whole value chain has changed. So the same operational, frameworks which we learned probably needs to be rethought in the circular context. And then the balance sheets are changing, the disclosures are changing. When you talk of valuation, we have true value method. You are looking at environmental valuation. You're talking of natural resource economics. You're talking of, social, impact assessments. So I think, as academicians, when we prepare students for green jobs, which essentially talks of, carbon energy and water efficiency, it talks of the emissions and calculations. It talks of, circularity in context of 6R. I think a transformational change is required. And if you ask me what are the green jobs, if this panel was happening somewhere around 2015-16, I would be, saying that things are looking a little bleak, but I'm surprised with the transition that India has had in these 6-7 years. Earlier, we would, look for some, job roles which were very well defined, what we call as job description, that very well defined job description for green jobs. Today, we have them. And with SEBI in 2021 mandating the ESG has brought about a big change, and already India has promised, for their INDC target of 40%. That has brought in a lot of traction. We have special institutions coming up, NIAC, which is the National Institute, the Solar Alliance. So I would say it is today we are in a much confident phase. We have job descriptions related to ESG, sustainability reporting. We have clean tech related, jobs. The whole process KPIs have changed, and industry is realizing it, and we are moving in the process integration concept. We are looking at more system thinking, and you're looking at zero discharge, how to do the stoichiometric calculations. So that is very heartening to see. Now, at the field level, we need more and more people who are going to help, as you lightly said, make it operational and actionable at remote areas, in urban cities. So there are a lot of jobs which are there, but if we continue, preparing individuals with the same old linear model curriculum, I'm afraid it's going to take time, So while the industry outside and jobs outside are getting defined very well, we at academics levels also have to, quickly realign ourselves for transformational change, not just small tweaking that we look at.
Absolutely, Dr. Sutapa. We need transformational change to have green leaders, sustainable leaders of the future. Absolutely. Dr. Sutapa, you have done a lot of research on community-based entrepreneurship. So what are the challenges and opportunities there? Right? If we form the self-help groups led by women and who are doing work on biogas, hydro, and they start the entrepreneurship projects. So what are the challenge opportunities do you see in that direction?
Yeah. If you talk of self-help groups from 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, it was more in context of microfinance. Today, if you take the example of Odisha's Mission Shakti, they have enrollment of more than 70 lakh women who have formed self-help groups, and they are promoted by the state government, and you have these groups as part of the governance structure, and very well-defined federation structure is in place. Coming to the capacity building that they have, we had one training where from all blocks of the state, the women SHG leaders had come for training. And this training for, related to sustainable entrepreneurship and leadership program. And we were amazed with the already work that they had put in. Most of the groups had, made numerous toilets under the Swachh Bharat mission. And the way they were describing the whole project management process, it was almost, it was a well-defined groups who had worked as entrepreneurs for years. And so the capacity building part, which is being thought at, is just wonderful. We can, take these structures as, Erik was mentioning about the Andhra Pradesh, example. So states today have understood that SHG, especially women SHGs, could be empowered in, the livelihood and microfinance part, they anyway remain. But the sustainable and social entrepreneurship part, and they playing a role in governance, is very critical. In pandemic time, we saw the amount of, contribution that in resiliency and, climate adaptation that they brought in also in the disaster prone. Odisha, and the coastal belt is disaster prone. And SSGs form a wonderful, examples of work that they have put in. So as far as challenges are concerned, our research showed that at field level, we are looking at economic factors. We are looking at, technological factors which are there. We are looking at environmental factors. And we are also looking at community participation factors. When you talk of renewable energy, especially decentralized, once we had a research where we said that in the whole research work, we termed it as the variable energy sources, it's rather than renewable energy, to emphasize this point that stabilizing it, stabilizing the supply chain or stabilizing the, maintenance and work of it is highly critical. And also training and capacity building and community ownership, how to work out the financial models. So technical aspects, financial aspects, community participation aspects, and environmental, aspects associated with variable energy sources, especially for decentralized models. And India does have a lot of traction now with the megawatt scale project, but decentralized below 50 kilowatt peak load would be wonderful if we could create some beautiful solutions. There are some examples, but I think the examples are few now.
Sure. And I think, Sutapa, I see a huge opportunity there. Maybe we can all join hands and help. Because we have seen a successful example of Amul as a self-help group and where it has reached. Yes. Similarly, we can have it out there, and it goes to the inclusion and sustainability points both.
Yes.
Thanks, Dr. Sutapa. Erik, so Nordic countries, Erik, are one of the most inclusive societies in the world. Now, do you think we need more women in board, non-executive directors to drive sustainability agenda? So Sutapa touched upon the self-help groups, and now I want your view from the board perspective.
No, I mean, absolutely. It has been underlined by the number of the speakers, starting right from the beginning, that we need an inclusive agenda. We need to bring on board everyone. If you look to the past, when major issues were resolved, it was also three forces who brought the change. It was citizens standing up, demanding change, political leaders framing the change and making the vision, and it was business scaling solutions with new technologies and innovation. That was exactly how we, for instance, stopped the destruction of the ozone layer, which will now beautifully come back by 2050 in the form it was before we started destroying it. So for sure, citizens' action is needed. Without that, nothing will happen. And women are front and center of that. They are, by the way, also more and more front and center in politics and business. So we need that. I may add one other element, which I believe is critical, and that is a fair transition. Because as I said, and many others have said the same in maybe better ways, there are enormous opportunities in the green shift. There will be many more jobs, much better jobs, better paid jobs. There will be prosperity and happiness for so many people. But still, not everyone will benefit in the same way. If you are in Kentucky in the United States, you may feel that, well, the jobs will come in California or in Arizona and the solar industry there, not in my coal mine. If you are in India, say in the state of Jharkhand, which is a coal-dependent state, you may feel that, yes, Tamil Nadu will surge ahead, and so will Karnataka, but what will happen here in Jharkhand? And exactly the same in China, everywhere. So we need to invest in those people who will need to get new jobs. We need to invest in those areas which will feel that they are lagging a little bit behind, because if we do not make the transition fair, you will get a lot more resistance. They're much harder to do it, but you will also trample on people which we should not do. So let's make the transition as just and inclusive as we can. And of course, women are absolutely central to that.
Absolutely, Erik. And I think we need to do a lot in some other countries, like Nordics, they are way ahead of having non-executive directors, women in boards, but I think other countries need to step up and get that.
we have women prime ministers in four out of the 5 Nordic countries at the moment. Only Norway has not, but on the other hand, we have had 2 women prime ministers in the past. So yes, in these areas, we are somewhat in the lead.
Sure. Thanks, Erik. James and Sutapa, I'm going to come back to you now. So we want to move to the circular. James, I would like to understand how we can make agriculture circular, and Sutapa, how can we make fashion circular?
Yeah, I think food systems, massive issue, of course, at the moment, as we see food prices going through the roof, and some really serious warnings about what this is going to mean for particularly developing countries and emerging markets. But we know we're feeling the pressure here in the UK as well. I think the first thing that is really quite obvious almost is how do we reduce food waste? We do have a third of food is wasted, and of course we also find that a lot of food is consumed to poor effect, and we have, I think, over 1.2 billion people on the planet who are actually obese, alongside the 600 million people who are starving. So how do we balance that out better? And then I think we should look at regenerative food systems. We need to think about landscapes as a means of capturing carbon. We need to work away from meat consumption. I mean, there is good meat consumption and bad meat consumption, but it really doesn't make any sense to cut down the Amazon to grow soy to feed to cattle. And we need to really focus on those sorts of things that bring together food demand with the supply side as well. And we end up with a fair price for farmers for growing high quality, sustainable crops. And if we can do that in a way that also manages the fertilizer situation and other input costs as well, then I think that could be really very powerful. It's 25% of emissions, so it's a huge opportunity, and there's some really great thinking going on as well at the moment. Some work called Regen 10, which I think is really impressive. There's a lot of work on food waste reduction as well. And here in the UK, we're working with WWF, which has done some great work on what's called Land of Plenty, how we make our food systems in the UK fit for purpose. And all that can support regenerative agriculture and circular food systems. So really, it's top priority, existential in a literal sense, and one I think we can do something quite rapidly around. Thank you.
Thanks. Sutapa, how can we make fashion circular?
I think we have to look both from consumption pattern point of view and production pattern point of view. The concern with textile materiality issues with the textile sector is more than 60% is synthetic or blended polymers, and the whole with each wash, the microplastics, which the whole concern of microplastics, I think textile sector has a role to play. There's the issue of toxic chemicals with the dyes, and also with the water intensity. So these are some of the material issues. If you look at consumption side, 53 million tons if we produce for clothing, hardly less than 15% goes for the recycling, and at the same time more than 70% goes to the landfill. So this whole recycling, and at the same time then some data is also showing that with the new textile economy, that after 6 or 8 times we discard our clothes, and especially cheap clothing is discarded more faster. So I think this question is a little philosophical. Historically and ancient context, clothing has been, sustainable clothing and wear and whole consumption pattern had been defined in our country, and many parts of the world. So the whole consumption pattern needs to be looked at, and I think textile is a burning issue today. And here designers need to play a role, because back in the marine system, ecosystem, everything, the textile sector. So I think hand in hand, both need to be worked at. One is the consumption pattern change and the production pattern change.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if we can make textile and agriculture circular, majority of problem would be solved. Okay, taking it further, Ehab, how can digitalization help? You have done a lot of research on that, right? How can digitalization help in meeting the resource scarcity, particularly in MENA region?
Yes, thank you, Aparna. I will be quick since we are already out of time. Actually, for the digitalization, the digital transformation is changing our world now. This is why it has to be actively managed to leverage digitalization as a driver of sustainability. Digital technologies in MENA region can support fighting climate change impacts and open up, let's say, untapped potentials in many areas. For example, it can be reduced the greenhouse gas emissions, achieve sustainable resource consumption in the MENA region. In terms of risks, also they have digitalization. It has multiple risks in terms of the climate change if it's not actively managed. Let's say digitalization also has an ecological price. For example, the vast numbers of devices, the data centers, and communications infrastructure consumes increasing amounts of energy, let's say. Also, the materials itself have an impact at the end of the product life cycle. So I think this is the major digitalizations, maybe opportunities and risks for digitalization in MENA region. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Ehab. Sarah, you are part of the initiative, which is one of my favorites, right? That bike transform the cities and cities transform the world. Right? And those who love cycling, I'm sure most of us would love cycling, right? So, Sarah, how is it making a positive change?
Thanks, Aparna. I mean, I loved hearing that discussion about the circular economy and about our consumption, because after so much time working in the movement, I think, what are the simple solutions as well? And how can we re-adopt those simple solutions? How can we look back on what our past generations have taught us? My mum, when it was Christmas time, her doll would disappear in October and it would come back in December with a different painted face and little new outfit that was sewn on. What can we learn from the past generations? So cycling is part of that. And what can we adopt and move forward? Because my gut feeling is we're not going to mine ourselves out of this situation. We really, really need to use, reuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, all these simple solutions. So bikes is helping transform cities and design them around people rather than just cars. And there are places where Norway, I love, like there's so many electric vehicles. There are bigger distances. It's not saying we don't need electric vehicles, but where can we build a shared economy? How can we reuse the resources that we already have? I heard a horrific stat just recently that planet Earth, our one planet Earth, which we are abusing and she's not taking it anymore, has got more stuff in volume on the planet than there is biomass. So that's terrifying. So we're not going to build our way out of this. We need to go back to some more sustainable and simple solutions, design cities around humans, not cars. We get marketed to buy things that we don't need. So it's up to us as individuals and consumers to say no. I would love to have, I've got my app where I track my carbon emissions. I would love to see that where you see the he, him or she, her as I was at 9 tons of carbon emissions last year, I'm at 7 tons. How can we reduce, reuse, recycle, and just get back to the simple solutions?
Awesome, Sarah. So my next question to all the panelists would be, so we've talked a lot about the green economy, but are we all doing a green shopping or commitment? Like I can say for myself, I've started buying less, right? I've started reusing my clothes more and more as a commitment. I started conserving water. I would love to know what you all are doing as your commitment to green shopping or investing in our planet. Erik, we'll start with you.
Yeah. No, I mean, on the personal front, I vote for green politicians, which are critical because you need political leaders. I try to buy the most environment-friendly product. I'm not a vegetarian, but I mean, not a principal vegetarian, but I eat a lot of vegetarian food. And of course, I agree very much with Sarah that we need to, as much as we can, walk and go by bicycle and create very different, different cities. And her point that we need to also pick up some of the ideas of the older generation. My grandmother didn't throw away anything in her life. There was always a way of reducing everything because they were poor. They couldn't afford to throw away anything. And my mother also, she never threw away food because she remembered the time when there was little food during the war. And she remembered it very well. So she felt, and she felt it ashamed to throw away food. And we need to recycle and reuse and refuse, but we need to do it in a practical way. You cannot just moralize to people. We need, 99% of all clothes are thrown away. What a crazy idea. And we can reuse them and we can recycle them. But you need to make system so that it's practical for people. The same of course with the recycling of phones, recycling of food, stopping food waste. Yes, we need pick up some of this old moral from the older generation, but we must make it practical for people in the 21st century. Otherwise, it will not happen.
Absolutely with you, Erik. Cannot agree with you. Same goes for most of our parents. They actually used to use a lot of reuse the things, and we need to learn a lot from them and make it applicable for a current. Karuna, I'll come to you. What's your commitment?
I would like to speak about Earth Day Network's commitment. We use every opportunity to give alternatives to people, and only then can you go green. Because if you just pass a law and single-use plastic is banned, unless you give people an alternative, it's not going to happen. So on Earth Day, we have schools all over the country making paper bags. We get them, decorate them, and we get them to take it to the shops outside their school and explain to the shop owners there why they should use these paper bags instead of using plastic ones. We have encouraged jute for everyone to use, jute bags for them to use. And in this way, we recognize large voices, or let me say powerful voices, like religious places. Whichever religious places, we have awarded the Amritsar Golden Temple, we have recognized Tirupati, we have recognized Siddhi Vinayak, because you know what I can say as an individual, or I can do as an individual, is limited to a couple of hundred. But what these people can say or do is in millions. So we recognize them, and that encourages others to do. But I always say that making rules is good, but you must have alternatives so that people can use those to implement the rules. Otherwise, people are just going to, break them or find ways of not, going by them. So
absolutely, it needs to come from the heart. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Karuna. Sutapa?
Yeah, in our university, students, they have two committees. One is called as EcoSpace and another is called a Conserve. And there are a lot of interesting small, like Sarah was mentioning, small design solutions, small initiatives. They call it green nudges. And, as a student community with youth surrounding villages. And recently we completed the green audit for the campus, and so there are multiple things they're doing, many initiatives, and we also want to start measuring deeply our footprints, individual footprints, all faculty members, and and we also don't want to remain within the school, so outside university and all larger in the cities. So that's the thing. We want to take it at a big integrated framework using the green audit methodology.
Okay, thank you. Ehab?
Yes, thank you, Aparna. I do agree with James at the personal level. We are practicing not to throw the food that we have, the sustainable consumption of food, let's say. Also, since Jordan is the second poorest country in the water resources, we have no other choice. We are practicing water management and water conservation in order to keep up our water, let's say. Also, I think practicing recycling, there is a new trend here in the country, and also at the MENA region at recycling. We have a lot of initiatives in the region, factories, manufacturers who are working on recyclable materials. So I think this is a good trend that's happening now here in the region and at the personal level. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Ehab. James?
So if you live in a cold and drafty country like the UK, get your house insulated. I think that makes a massive difference. I think use your savings for good, make your money matter, pension funds, and make it invest in impact and low carbon funds. And then we have something called Odd Box over here in the UK, which is for all the sort of potential thrown away fruit and vegetables. And we get a batch of that every fortnight. And that's a great way of getting great quality vegetables and reducing food waste, and forces you to think about how to use things that you wouldn't normally get, like aubergines and celeriac. And it's a brilliant way of getting lots of variety in your vegetables. So there's three things from me.
Thanks, James. Pradeep?
So my perspective on this is twofold. One is that we need to make sustainability as part of our DNA. That means we must think and act in anything and everything that we do. Number two is that we need to make sustainability cost effective. So help promote cost effective solutions. And I'll give you an example. And I'll ask all of the panelists. Suppose you had a choice. You were traveling out of station and you had to stay in a 5-star hotel where the cost was hypothetically $100. But you had an option of staying in an eco-friendly 4-star hotel, but the cost was $200. Which option would you take? So we have to work towards combining the Maslow's need hierarchy model with the sustainability model. So that is my take on that.
Thanks, Pradeep. Sara, anything more you want to commit? Okay. Any questions, any thoughts from any panel, the one on the sessions? Shalini, I know you are a green entrepreneur. You want to quickly talk about your venture? You have to go unmute, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I've been the founder of this company, which is called Indie Cotton Root. And we are totally wanting to promote this slow fashion because I myself is, a big brand ambassador for that, because I feel, so much for the planet. And, when you see, especially, programs like David Attenborough's programs, where how the nature and, is being taken over by, the people, because the population has grown so much, and how much we are losing our oceans and all. So you feel so much that what are we leaving back for the generations to come? So in that, we know that we cannot bring about a very big change, but I feel that even a small change that we can do, it can actually change other people. Like, in autumn, the greens change very gradually, So that's what we feel, that every person, even a small change that they can bring about, can actually lead to a very big change. So this is what we are doing. We are trying to do that, we try to make slow fashion as everyday living. We work with the weavers, where we are able to actually preserve the art of India, which has been built over thousands of years. And we don't want to lose that art, which we have been able to build over so many years. So it's a slow process, because the weaving takes time. It gives employment to the people. At least it gives a basic, livelihood to the people, and it changes communities. It brings about more prosperity to them. And a garment which is a little more expensively priced also for the consumer, that is a more, a garment which is precious to them. They just don't, wear it and just lose it immediately. So then the wearability of the garment is, over a lot of years. So that's exactly what happens with our garment, because our clients come back to us and they say, that, this garment which we bought from you, we have been wearing for the past 10 years. We have been wearing for the past 15 years and things like that. And we feel very happy about the fact, that their garment has lasted for so long for them. And they say that even the design does not go out of fashion with them. So that is something that we really aspire for. The other thing is that during the pandemic, when the work was very scarce for our weavers, the work was very scarce for our tailors, and we thought how we can actually give them employment because they have to run their houses also. And then we realized that we have a lot of katrans, which we have a lot of scraps which is left from the clothing that we create. And so we decided that why not consume this and make art out of this. And because so that they are able to keep themselves busy because the work was not enough. And so we started creating this beautiful art out of katrans, which suddenly became such a hit because I had just posted a few pieces on Facebook and some journalists started calling us up and they said that this is beautiful arts that you're doing. They published us in the newspapers. We started getting calls, and then we've been making this art for, resorts, for companies, for offices and things like that. So the circular fashion has happened very well for us. And we thought that at least this can bring about awareness also with people that they are thinking that circular fashion can happen in any way, So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And I think this is, Aparna, I really want to congratulate you that you have been able to get together such a panel of people who are in this green energy and which will inspire so many of us to be on that journey also. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Shalini, for sharing your experience. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, all the panelists, for being with us and sharing your experience. And this is just the start of our relationship. We look forward to work with you more to help moving to the greener economy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
As a last word,
Thank you.
first of all I want to say to everybody is this is just the beginning. This is not a one-off event. This is getting together different stakeholders, like we partnered with Earth Day, and we got together people from all over the world and leaders from all over the world. This is the beginning of our journey and our journey together. Take care. Have a lovely morning, evening, afternoon, night. Enjoy your morning cup of tea or your evening glass of wine or even an afternoon glass of lassi. Bye from Sydney.